for this press conference. Today's presser talks about the issues surrounding police going out of their bounds. It talks about the police not being accountable to accidents. It talks about the police going out of their ways to use undemocratic measures in trying to control crowds, especially during civic or citizen agitations. The theme for this presser is police shootings and extrajudicial killings. And more focus on issues that happened in Edra, in Kranza, Akachi, and then similar incidents in the north. If you look at data that was gathered so far from our media folks, because when you write to the police, they do not count for anything in regards to the data that tells us how many killings are happening within the coffers of the police. So through the hard work of you guys over here, we tend to get some sort of, scattered reports here and there about police brutalities. Now these are the things that we prove. If you look at the numbers from 2017 to 2022, we have over 70 cases of police brutalities happening. And we tend to ask the biggest question: who checks the police service? Who actually brings them to account? How do you demand accountability from the Ghana Police Force? When you even write letters to them, you do not even issue receipts to the person. I would like to call on Nana Felicity over here to start with the introductory remarks, and then more or less I do statements in English for us. Thank you very much.
So it's a slide one. Let's do a slight introduction of Felicity. Gives a statement on behalf of the country. Thank you. Good morning, everyone. I appreciate your joining us for today's conversation. Today, I want to make clear that even though the country is convening this conversation, what we are doing extends beyond just us as the country. One of the things we want to avoid, or one of the things we are very particular about, is for you to understand that this conversation is not about us. It's about the people whose lives have been affected by an area of our democracy that we don't talk enough about police accountability. And it's important that this conversation is captured, that this is a press conference by victims and families of victims of police violence and extrajudicial killings in our republic. Today, you'll be hearing from folks from Nkranza, where a young man was abducted from his bed and executed by the Ghana Police Service. You'll be hearing from families of a young person who, exercising their democratic right to protest, was gunned down by the police force in Nkranza. You'll also be hearing from another person from Tamale, whose relative has also been lost, again, through police violence and extrajudicial killing. We'll be having folks from Akachi, who will also be speaking to you today, and we'll be having folks from Ejura, who after 1 year of what a commission of inquiry has described as unjustified and unlawful use of force to kill and maim individuals in Ejura, nothing has happened so far. And we want to be able to give you these things so as we stimulate conversation around this important question. When the appropriate time comes, I'll have the individuals themselves come up here and introduce themselves and speak directly to you. But before we do that, I will be inviting my colleague, Felicity Nelson, one of the conveners of the country. My colleague Felicity Nelson, who will be speaking to you and making a statement on behalf of the country. But before, though, I know that the Ghana Police Service has gone on and released a statement with regard to an impending demonstration. And my colleagues will be addressing this in due course. But I want it to be clear that this conversation and what we are doing here is really about the victims. And when my colleagues come and speak about this, you see how all these issues are interconnected. So thank you for your patience, and I appreciate it.
Good morning, friends in the media, colleagues in the civil society space. Our role as the fourth estate of our democracy. For this reason, we hope that you will shed light into the areas of our democracy where darkness has for so long infiltrated. We are also hopeful that your presence today will help shed light on those families who are not in the rooms with us today, or whose pain and suffering should not be diminished by reason of their absence only. Friends, as you are aware, it's been 30 years since our people chose for themselves a democracy. In voting so overwhelmingly for a new democratic experience, it was the hope of those our parents and grandparents who made that gamble for a multi-partisan democracy that the bitter memories of dictatorship, the years of state-sanctioned violence, and the culture of violent impunity will finally be given a decent burial. Colleagues, it's been 30 years of our democracy. Unfortunately, our democracy has refused to retire violence and arbitrary killings permanently. It is for this reason, and also in connection with our interest in auditing our democracy, that we've gathered you here today to shed a light on an issue that has now become the painful reality of life as a Ghanaian in our democracy. The fact is, extrajudicial killings by persons in uniform have, in our country, been a feature of policing, law and enforcement, and military interactions with unarmed civilians for years. As many of you are aware, these killings have gone on for years, together with documented histories of unjust and unlawful detentions, evasive stops and searches and swoops. These incidents have not only become routine, but they've also been normalized in how we talk dismissively of them, report on them, and even strangely expect them as normal whenever you're interacting with persons in uniform. As many of you will agree, these incidents of abuse have become a real part of Ghanaian cultural expectation. And there are so many people who consider that in everyday police and military interactions, you're likely to be physically assaulted, tortured, sexually harassed, and now increasingly killed. Noting this, we've become concerned not only by the history of violence and the brute treatment of citizens in Ghana, but also by the fact that over the past few years, and particularly in these past couple of months, we're witnessing an upsurge in police violence, military brutality, and extrajudicial killings by persons in uniform. If we are highlighting this issue now, it is partly because extrajudicial killings in Ghana today are attracting a lot of attention at the moment because of its large scale and the level of impunity enjoyed by its perpetrators. By choosing to speak up today, we are signaling to you and to the world our refusal to participate in what has become a real tendency to normalize state-sanctioned violence and extrajudicial killings in our democracy. So our objective today is to push for a real conversation on how we can achieve true accountability and justice for the various victims of police and military brutality. We also hope to draw attention to an issue that we believe diminishes the substance of our democratic experience as a people, and our attempts to consolidate the rule of law in Ghana. Before we hear from the families who are the real reason why we're here today, there are a number of issues we would like to address quickly. The first point I would like to make is that we need to understand that violence associated with law enforcement is an institutional problem. These are not just acts by some few bad nuts in the police force. Far from it. Violence and killings without repercussions are part and parcel of the police institution and are embedded in the culture of the institution. The reason why it is important to make this point right from the outset is because we have seen what appears to be a tendency to minimize the scale of the problem and the urgency of the reforms needed. For instance, over the past few days, we followed discussions on policemen engaged in armed robbery incidents across the country and the increasing involvement of persons in the police force in the commission of violent crimes. In connection with these incidents, we've noted a tendency by some to dismiss these incidents of violent crimes and the violence associated with policing as being isolated incidents or problems with recruitment of a certain batch of police officers. Without seeming to undermine the fact that recruitment into the security agencies has become a vehicle for politicians to create jobs for the boys, often without proper or any background checks, and in disregard of all professional standards, it is important we also refrain from treating these incidents of criminality and extrajudicial killings as acts of just some few lone rangers. The truth is, those dismissive narratives are not supported by the evidence. There is a real culture of impunity and violence associated with everyday law enforcement interactions across the entire country. Several researchers and human rights reports, both domestic and international, have highlighted the fact that criminal conduct such as bribery, extortion, robbery, as well as violence and unjustified use of force in our policing and law enforcement interactions generally are pervasive. In order for us to be able to fix the problem, we must first acknowledge the true scale of the problem and how violence is embedded in everyday police interactions. The second issue I want to raise today relates to data gathering and publishing on police violence. Currently, there is very limited data on police violence in Ghana. For instance, if you wanted to understand the scale of the problem and try to find information on the number of people the police killed, for instance, just last year, this kind of information is difficult to come across. This is primarily because the police are refusing to compile and publish this kind of data. In fact, we've submitted 4 different right to information requests to the Ghana police. All of them have gone unanswered. Their consistent refusal by the police to respect the right to information law highlights a real disinterest by the police establishment in being held accountable for its actions. Also, the refusal to comprehensively compile and publish data is, in our opinion, intentional and seeks to hide the true scale of the problem. This then undermines any critical attention we can give to the issue. The net effect is that we are less able to police the police, demand accountability in their activities, and evaluate their policies. We know from several reports by the United Nations on torture, cruel and inhumane treatment that the police do not disclose information on persons who are killed by the police in their work. When we look at the data, what we see is that the police are either reporting every death and their custody as being of natural causes, or they're refusing to disclose those who are shot and killed by the police. The only consistent source of information on police killings and deaths in custody are the very limited cases reported by the media. The question then is, how do we assess policing if there's little data? What is the guiding policy, policing policy? By what benchmarks, baseline studies, or metrics are we formulating and remaking police policy to ensure that policing serves pressing and modern needs? How do we audit the police and demand critical accountability if no data exists? Another issue we are witnessing is that there's very clearly a lax or permissive culture around the discharge of firearms by police officers in their everyday interaction with law enforcement, including during crowd control situations. Various sources within the police service have confirmed to us that the police officers are encouraged to use their weapons more liberally in law enforcement. Several police officers have spoken to us privately and confirmed that police officers increasingly feel that the only way to secure performance-related promotions within the service is to go and kill an armed robber. It is thus not surprising that incentive-driven police killings have increased significantly. We are witnessing increased accounts and reports of police officers shooting and killing innocent and unarmed civilians in all kinds of situations where the discharge of firearms was clearly unjustified and intolerable. We've also witnessed police officers abducting civilians from their beds and executing them, and then tagging them as armed robbers in order to court and gain public applause for law enforcement. We are also witnessing several instances where police officers in crowd policing situations have consistently discharged live ammunition and firearms with impunity and without care for life and limb of persons exercising their freedom of assembly. Rather than providing policing that is conscious of democratic rights, such as the freedom of assembly, so as to provide protesters with the protection of the law, incentive-driven police killings are carried out with impunity. Several studies show that officers working within the most restrictive policy framework use force less readily than officers who operate within more permissive policy environments. Despite this, it is clear that the very lax environment and permissive culture that exists in our law enforcement around the use of firearms in civilian interactions have created a culture where human lives are being trivialized by the police and extrajudicial killings are on the ascendancy. We are also deeply troubled by the frequency and ease with which military persons with no or little training in civilian engagement, de-escalating tense crowd situations peacefully, and in crowd policing are deployed to several communities which are more often than not leads to fatal situations. Despite the instances of extrajudicial killings, including situations where military personnel have been found by commissions of inquiry to essentially use civilians for target practice, we continue to see politicians deploy the military into our communities. We are also concerned that the reason why extrajudicial killings are only increasing is linked to the near absence of accountability for such killings. Information available to us show that the police officers involved in such killings are not even placed on administrative leave, and they're often back on the streets by the very next day. There is no systemic practice of investigating the discharge of firearms by police officers. As a result, several situations of police violence and extrajudicial killings are not acknowledged, nor providing an avenue for justice. The lack of investigations for the discharge of firearms by police officers in law enforcement interactions, and the fact that victims and their families very rarely receive justice in connection with such killings and violence compounds the culture of impunity. Several victims who have tried to use the PIPS process, which is the internal police process for investigating police wrongdoing, is ineffective, deliberately designed to frustrate victims, and is intentionally set up in a way that is not civilian-friendly and not supportive of accountability in the policing. We are also concerned that the media is uncritical in their coverage of extrajudicial killings, and this has compounded the culture of impunity. It is true that journalists who cover the police and the military face the real threats and dangers. For instance, a recent study done by some research from Cambridge University shows that of the 150 who responded to a question on reporting police violence, 85% said they were unsafe doing so, 90% in the case of reporting abuses by the military. We also appreciate that the media have become space to civilians to report police brutality, and believe that this has allowed us and other interested stakeholders to start noticing the patterns of violence and extrajudicial killings happening all over the country. However, we are concerned that if journalists self-censor with regard to police and military violence, or are uncritical in their reportage of police and military violence, our society becomes even more unsafe, leading to more likelihood of violence against everyone, including journalists. We see on a daily basis stories where police have shot and killed persons and labeled them as criminal suspects. Very often, the stories of reportage are based only on police press statements, which are regurgitated wholly. There are often no attempts to speak to victims or their families to create a balance or to verify what the police say. There are numerous stories with the headlines: police gun down suspected robbers. Somehow these suspects are always killed in a shootout. Through a choreographed media encounter, the bodies of the deceased, who the media encouraged to call criminal suspects, are put on display. The police neatly arrange a series of guns, bullets and knives or other weapons allegedly associated with the criminal activities of the deceased suspects. Often uncensored, these displays are plastered on TV screens and front pages of newspapers. We are further concerned about the persistence of the police going into communities and arresting many people unlawfully, particularly in marginalized and poorer communities. Such police groups violate many civil rights, and they have been criticized the world over as highly ineffective. In these groups, the police and sometimes in collaboration with the military arrest dozens of people they claim could be engaged in criminal activity. For instance, in September 2019, 410 so-called suspected criminals were picked up in a joint military and police group. Out of the 410, only 12 were arraigned for various drug offenders. It means 398 people were unjustly arrested and detained. These folks were traders, porters, drivers, and unemployed persons who lived in Adenta and Medina. In light of the foregoing, we make the following demands. Number one, setting up an independent investigative body. We're demanding that an independent civilian expert body be established to probe allegations against members of the security agencies. The body should be tasked to undertake investigations concerning every action by members of the security force and other agents of the state that results in death or injury to persons, or the abuse of the rights of persons in such connected matters. We note that several experts share our view that the fact that police are allowed to investigate themselves not only accounts for the failure to stop the violence in police encounters, but also compounds the problem of extrajudicial killings and violence. The PRIPS process, we have found, does not work effectively, and we are committed to reform. We must be prepared to explore independent mechanisms that promote accountability and promote faith in our democracy. There are several examples of how these mechanisms have worked in other developing countries. For instance, Jamaica's Independent Commission of Investigation started work in 2010 and not only investigates police killings, but also publishes extensive data on such killings. The establishment of such a body enhances our ability to formulate intelligent policing policies. We are demanding an immediate end to the deployment of military persons in civilian crowd control situations. We are demanding that the police officers immediately cease the use of live ammunition in protest by unarmed civilians and in crowd control situations. We are demanding the putting in place of operating procedures on public order policing immediately. We are demanding that the Attorney General prioritizes prosecution of offended police officers. That's the end of our submission. Thank you.
Woo! On Monday.
The abuse and harsh treatment of the police and some of them led to the environment. We will first call on the Kranza and take you to campus again to them talk to them, express their sadness and how bad the police was treated with their families.
So over here, Kofua, and Pimpi, you know, one more cake, and more sad, and Komoya ye dear. ɛnyɛ wɔn a wɔte cantonment ɛnyɛ wɔn a wɔte Nabɔni ɛnyɛ wɔn a wɔte East Lagos ɛnyɛ wɔn a wɔte Trasacco ɛyɛ yɛ maame no mu a wɔte ɛyɛ Circle Nkranza Suhum Adwira ana saa nneɛma wei ɛto wɔn yɛn ho sɛ obi akɔ demonstration ami ɛhyetu no ami ɛsɛ minister bi ba eti na ɛho behia sɛ yɛbɛma wɔn a wɔte ɛyɛ yɛkasa no a dominate more no wɔn ate aseɛ ɛnɛ twa yɛtwa ahyia nyinaa no de dodoɔ naa yɛ eku a yɛ Ghanafoɔ no yɛtua sika ɛde tumi ahyɛ ɛyɛ deɛ yɛfrɛ no Ghana Police Service mobɛka yɛ berɛ bi yɛtwam ne yɛfrɛ no Ghana Police Force ɛwɔ deɛ nti a ne yɛfrɛ no Force because 1844 no a George McLean ɛte ɛyɛ Ghana Police Force no na deɛ nti a ɔmo ɛte yɛ sɛ ɔmo de bɛbɔ ɛyɛ coastal belt ne ho ban as against Asantefoɔ a na wɔn torment wɔn so it was a force ebedu baabi yɛsesa din no ba service now yɛka service ya menu mmienu nyinaa yɛnkɔ school kura yɛnim sɛ MTN ɛwɔfa service etu duru hɔ a sɛ dɔm si no kasa ofrɛ wɔn a wɔn no kasa ne da so yɛnim sɛ company bi te sɛ Vodafone ɛne ade wɔn nyinaa ɔfa service na so obi ɔfa service deɛ a na ɛsɛ nipa no yɛ friendly ɛsɛ nipa no ɔfa service no or what it takes for a human relations. Here lies the case where yafa and Nkrofobi say omo Ghana Police Service, but they still have the brutish mentality like when the force was in place. Etienne Nkrofo a demonstration. Instead say wombe hunu say womo so manfo no enti wombe hunu kwan e fa so eso manfo no. And then womo de manfo de 2 million a yede ma womo no ankasa no esa eku manfo. Eno ni titire eti na yetwa hia yɛse yɛma dodoɔ no ate aseɛ sɛ sadeɛ no entimi kɔso nnɛ entimi kɔso kyena sɛdeɛ Oliver di kaakaeɛ no yɛwono sɛ police no a release statement bi nso yɛbɛka ho asɛm na yɛma wɔn mu a yɛku wɔn adehyeɛ na wɔn nsunu mu ɛteɛ wɔn man a yɛte mu a ɛnwom a yɛto mi wu a naasa o mi wu a naasa abedu baabi a wuwu a ɛnsa yɛ Uwa ese will be to make sure that justice is served in the right corners and in the right purpose. Yet to go see Bekum Ghana form Rantanama Bawa, you come we are near what to political bag in your court watching. Sasa Bisadoya Kukubiba. Dabi, Yanya Kukoye Nipa. Emre be a tremo American che, Nipa Bakupe and the Woo George Floyd. Emma, the whole American New Year singing a pijadibu. And then the idea of 77 previous. And Rantanama Bawa yeti bon kosunti, you come here Nipa. Ni ahwedi ni anka wase eno ane atwa hia se yanka mane nkoso ne nkoso kyena we will put a stop to it eti ebema kwan ama womu a omade hie omahwere womu no akasa womu wi a Oliver ebekasa na afi police ni statement no a womu de aba se yese yebese yetwitwo ekọ demonstration eno so yebeka wase beda mu nyina wase
Ena amurogo no gene laptop ena ni phone enti bra obedu fie no ena o ka se arobe se abu na gene phone ni laptop na ne ho adwiri no pa se police officers pa ka ho ti ya hu de sie arwati 230-25 ni abachi akola no ya the taxi number plate no so ya di desta akoba ni mo ni akire ina enti obi a wo twa na ehunu ye of friend sister say apolice for ko enti ni ti o mo an say apolice for chi akola no mi sister di akire ko police station no okodu oni e take akola statement about 3:30 oba fie say obebo family no amane 6 e kodu ho a case no between 3:30 to 6 no case no ko techiman mi sister no ko techiman ya case bi anu okowanchi Kosumia Kokitampo Samba Jura 2 days. As case be a mao. A police commander on Pranza. Was it a seven would teach him an acolani is safe? Tiber, you should move today. You call regional commander. Regional commander has got the same thing today. I say acolani is safe. Now, you should move to my better. You try 2 weeks. You call regional commander as a case in Wakra. You go to Accra. You say dead body, but compared to the free Bruce. A buyer. Now, no cry robbery case. Now, dead body, the free Bruce bear. And the Asano Yantiasia, the enemy time of Chakra 25th April. Besina 3 weeks and sana police have a country as a Akulana Kababi. Na police for Chirakulano had in a corner. Come no Koshiam Roberts. Na exchange of bullet bena, dear Kakulana Manu. And a more ma Aji between the pabe, you can't say quite police for a fast and police for near Nini. Na ultima Chiacola, na Bracola, no moon country 3 weeks. Na Motos Yakwana Eba. Entia no Mushia, enti IGP Deputy Bernie, I can't hear any say, Yade, I bet you I at in Akolan Papanio, and Dini Papa Ba. Umwa and IGP on Noabe, said Asama Ban or the University form. Now I heard, said Justice Bayajman, somehow can know the now with your forces. No more minimum entra. Yachi will be police for Abachini Pana Free, Yako Kuno. Na yanchi obia yefo obia so ma out George Floyd if he said da asemi see ade achi ayenim the president kan Ghana said the Ghana for enyem fa ho na nanate ho na yachi obi ne de hye kunu na onka ho hwe na ne entra abasa no minim ne entra mampanyi so te ho a ohwe saade no din sa na afeso ya nyemfo a wo Ghana ha apart from Kranza nyemfo a ede anu ato asemu minti asa National House of Chief aka bibia afa ho na enu achi demonstration ekoso se mokun Albert nti na Kranza yufo ye demonstration se per justice na police for certain be tutuo kunipa foforo eka ho ama nipa nkoro sai prepra eka ho enu achi no se nipa akoye demonstration a ya boka hwe abo TV de yatima chini ndi ko remind na nipa okun Albert kun sa akola no mo demonstration no de yanchi obi a ti esrese Ghana for mo aye na sa ansem wo ye ekoso no police for ni yedi no odwene ho a wonte ase sa we pictures na ekoso a police ni wunti mu ma abra demonstration ekoso na soldier for abegina ama obi a twene ho ko be se 50 meters away. Na se police ni ubedo na start shootings. The two bubo ni pekuna. Na pesa o kire yesai. Mo se mo bo ajapade ene nipa ho bai. Ti mo ku ye Ghana fo yina na ajapade mo di ayedai. Yesra. Nipa no ewu no. Bibia no odi ma ya nipa no betima sa ababa. Na mom de ye hia nkransa ma ye hia ne se. Justice be ye adwuma. Nipa di sa adwuma no asotwe fata bia no. Ghana mrade be masa nipa no na sabi say unam Ghana na say ohun police ni awunsuro say unya asem na ko police station awunsuro enti nipa bonefo abefra police mu yesra ya papa IGP ani Ghana fo nyina asem mu aye na say nipa no yenyi omoma na say nipa asotwe bia fata Ghana mfa mo say nipa no na ye nam Ghana yenyi ahoto ne mfa nanti medamas.
Miniane Victor Kojo Owusu and Albert demonstration is so two kind of money we na I was someone a woman is a mammy a walk of Rano the Baba Copa who yes in Nano. I'm friend of you I'm a 17th Brandano Pa and present traditional area free youth and advice here. Muna Mabu decided say Obey be kakra police ni say still am on the ekoso no o makoma mpe nti tai hihye eni ja hihye kakra ba mu emu ana na hwem ehu say police cars a eto aso num a ya twem techiman patrol eba na de na areho ni say o si form no na asoja fo ho sa abere no na police fo ni bi nso ho na so no obi anya ntutu
see from no one bisa biribiara one train biribiara yehu ya ne se wa start se o shuti na enye rubber bullet ne mom na live bullet e betima kunipa na yabusua ye de yeti anye yi ye nua ba kwa na oka ho na odi mabro no obi abofra na oka ye ho ono de tuo ne kaniti amunu ho amade wo abusua no haye ye ra akode na so ye nimsa abofra ne ntimi ma but ade ba kwa ye ni ba gye ho na yakon beto ye yem ne se be hu se hwehwemu fikofiko ekoso yes Ghana ban say Ghana Police Services no ye nua no mom ye ma wo nenso adu brese ono be kasa na aye ne ma ye wo se oye ye hwere sa ban beti bejoko we hwesa nsem ni yedi kan abusa ni ye bisa se ade na police for no use live bullet bra no pesa mo pam ni pa free hono ito so me no ba bia na police station ni wona be obo abofra no tuo no mutwa na etwe die enti na ho de ekobo no tuo ye to so me ensa why ne ma command ma otutu sa live bullet no so we ni nsema abusa ni ye bisa e dey fi police service no e de Ghana ban ho yesre na ya ka say ihia say hwemu be koso fiko IGP ban kransa be ka kire ye say we a new police service oye ye be sere ne say o mani nge hwebu ada anya say police na ni ni dara no yakoma haye ya sabo fra ko school ni ahwe na amana dru ye tere na ka obetwere wi na asem say ato nti ye stress aban no be me injustice na ye nua no so ono nso wo wi mu mpo obenya sumbi era wase nyame hwa
from university we can more it took 2 weeks in and demonstration because of demonstration na me can be there you need a businessman of village so na Tuesday market day so I was selling banana bear market nti the day na cost na although me kwa around ko hwe bi there but now we can't demonstration no nti baby na police station no crowd baby na ye dra no I too come no
ade na wan ko ka ho
your village me businessman na on Tuesday so it was market day so they didn't cost sana there over town no sana be cost sana there over there obeba o betima we hwe nti baby na me dra it too come na police station no it is about 70 meters or 60 meters na yem ben hokra nti me dra ha me kwana me full joint na me to aduane na ma yede mako me dra ha na etu no ka me sere nti me ti say bibi ahye me nti o ha na me se mani su bremi mani ti na me da hospital nti omo etu ka mo no nyina no omo de omo ba hospital nti na ye hospital nti tra hospital be 2 weeks and sana mo discharge nti omo discharge last Saturday nti we did say by now the nyina e hoye ka nipa ba and tunu boni yam the doctor general so almost by 5 hours asana meeting a operation ayi to the hospital on the na your hospital in so na police for hospital wa omo guide here because we are police in abomi too na we see police in examination so dia na dia yam hihye na dia ato mi so ya scientific say na regional minister kasa say omo a etu account no na che say omo can demonstrate so omo ya royalties no honti odo mbo court and I'm saying ti ehun police ni ko na me dey me ma hye me police ni na me ma hye hospital nto omo tra hospital until say omo discharge again enti akra American found but now dey ehun ye
a good day, and then I'd like to say good day to the press, the conveners of Fix the Country, and then everybody present. My name is Selo Mamezan, and then I come from Akachi.
So, do you know something? If you want to record, just come and put your phone down.
All right, so My name is Solomon Mazai and I come from Akachi, and I speak for the Akachi youth and the 3 families and the victims of. I am using the word consistent for the reason that police brutality in Akachi didn't start in the last 4 years. It's been going on for over 4 years to 6 years now. And we have a lot of evidence to show. There are a lot of people who are ready to talk, but we don't have nobody who is ready to listen. Akachi is a small town, not really a small town. We are more a town and a city, and then we have a lot of youths. About 60% of the population is youth-based. So you understand there's going to be a lot of youthful activities. Police brutality in Akachi is something nobody talks about, because most of the victims come from poor homes. And then most of the victims have parents who don't really understand the law. So most of the times they don't know what to do. So the cases don't go anywhere. Police has consistently been breaking down doors of boys in Akachi around 1 a.m., 2 a.m. for reasons that they are scamming. And this has gone on and on and on. The only time when it became news is when one person died. That is the first boy who died on November 5th. His name is Etwana Mavulekbo. Now I'll tell you the circumstances leading to the death of Etwana Mavulekbo. Etwana is a young boy, he's 21 years old. He's a fine boy, the ladies like him. So although he died at 21, he has 4 kids. Etwana he's this fine boy in town. So there's a designated area where boys sit. And in the evening, it's been turned illegal because sometimes boys smoke over there. So Etwana was standing there in the evening of November 3rd, when a certain police officer nicknamed Commando for the way he acts. You know, he acts like he breaks out or he beats boys, so they nicknamed him, his name is Commando, that's the way they call him. So Commando came for an arrest with his private car. He didn't use a police car for the arrest that day. He used his personal car, came with 2 other police officers and the community police boys, and then they caused an arrest. It was a ghetto raid at the place. Unfortunately, Etwana and 2 other boys were arrested and then taken over to the police station. Now, this is the problem. When they got to the police station, the police officer named Commando singled out Etwana from among the 2 boys and brought him to the counter back and used some huge stick to repeatedly beat him. Like, we have evidences. It was on radio. There was a lot of people talked about it, and a lot of people saw this happen. And there are people willing to testify. The inmates at the prison are willing to testify as we talk. They are willing to testify. He assaulted a guy with his teeth so much more that the guy lost breath and he left him. So the guy was complaining that it was Ted in the evening. On 4th, the guy was complaining that he's not feeling fine. They said the policeman just dismissed him. So they didn't take him to hospital early. They took him to the hospital around 4th in the evening. And on the 5th, he died at the whole teaching hospital. They took him to the Akachi Municipal Hospital first. And they realized the condition was serious, and they moved him to the whole hospital, and he died the next day. Now, this policeman, nothing has happened to him. We hear rumors that he's just been transferred. And the issue is that this policeman is with the wife at the police. The wife is also a CID. So the 2 of them are working at the same police station, at the Akachi police station. The 2 of them has been transferred. And I don't know how it happens, but then he was working at the police station with the wife. And if you know the things, if you hear stories of the things he has done, the way he has assaulted boys, it's so much, but nothing has happened to him. He has just been transferred. That is the rumors we're hearing. So that one happened on 5th. The guy died 3rd. The guy died on 5th. We buried him in April. And then we buried him in March. Then April, 9th April, around 1 a.m., another one happened. This one, the victim's name is Setona Agomada. Setona is a 19-year-old SS3 student of the Akachi Secondary Technical School. He had gone out in the evening with friends to a local pub we call Green Villa. So it was late, it was around 1 when he wanted to go home. So a friend of his named Dasibi called Dasibi's cousin, who has a motorbike, to come pick him to the house. So he came to pick them up and they were going home. So they said they reached a certain point and they saw the police van stopped somewhere. The police van, according to information, the police said it stopped the boys. They never did. The boys didn't even see the police. It was a two-way road. The police were over here and the guys came from the side. And when they saw the 3 guys on the motorbike, they chased them. And we have reasons to believe they just didn't ram into the boys. That the guys were actually shot. Set on them. We have reasons to believe. And that is why we are waiting for the autopsy report and other things before we really know how weird this thing got. Set on them with the 2 other guys who were on the bike going home. And then they said when they got to a point, they realized the police van was coming with top speed at their back. And then it was hitting the ramps, so they realized they were being chased. And they wanted to branch because it was 1 a.m. So then the guy in the middle said he had a gunshot. Before the gunshot, and they should know, the police van rammed into them, like to the metal barricades. And the guys all went unconscious, all the 3 of them. They woke up at the hospital in handcuffs. And later the police said, they said an armed robbery had happened that evening. And they were searching for 3 guys on a motorbike. My brothers and sisters, an armed robbery happened that day. The thieves will not be around. They aren't so dumb to be hanging around the same area where the armed robbery happened. And then Setonam died. And the problem with Setonam dying was that the police took them to the hospital that 1 a.m. Seized their cell phones and said they weren't going to call their families. So they weren't able to call their families. Setonam, whom we are suspecting had been shot in the head, had only the head bandaged. They didn't see to him. They said the police told the hospital that they were armed robbers. So the hospital also delayed and really taking critical attention of the boy. So it was around the next day, it was 1 a.m. At 2 p.m., one of the guy was riding the motorbike, his name is Chemilu Adamu. He saw one lady come to the hospital and talk to the lady that he begs. He wants to use a phone to call the house. So he's been here since the dawn, and then the parents, he's supposed to feed the animals. The father rears animals. So he's the one who takes care of it. So he says the father is going to get worried because the father has stroke now. The stroke is in the house. So he said the father will get worried. So he wants to call the house, and the lady benevolently gave the guy the phone. And then the guy called the house. And then the father called his brother. And that was when he's a Muslim. So that was when the Zongo boys rushed from their house to the hospital, numbering about 30 of them, Akachi youth, because it was a youth. And that was when they saw their brothers in handcuffs, and they demanded the police to remove the handcuff. And it wasn't easy, but the police got to remove the handcuff for the 2 guys. And the boys took their brothers away to another hospital, Sepe Clinic, for treatment. Setonam was in a critical condition. So when the family came finally, they realized his condition was serious. So they rushed him from the Akachi Municipal Hospital to the Reach Hospital in Accra, where he died. So this is the issue of Setonam. Now, when the Akachi youth heard that Setonam had died again, all right, so let me take you back a little. When the Etonam case happened on the 5th of November, when the Akachi youth heard he had died, every youth in Akachi moved to the police station because, see, the police brutality had been consistent. I can mention no less than 50 youths who had been arrested, their doors broken down, their TVs and things taken from their rooms and things like that. And the boys are ready to testify. Like the police will come see things in their room and sees it. It's been happening in Akachi for the last 4 years. It didn't just start today. It has been on and on and on, and who are you going to report the police to? That's the issue. So on the 5th of November, that was the first time Akachi youth went to the police station. That was when they threw rocks. That was the first time any youth in Akachi had ever attacked the police station. And the boys went and they threw rocks and stones, and then later the IGP came and the case was settled. Then the second one happened. So when the second one happened again, on the 10th of April, because he died on the 10th of April, the news came to Akachi. It was a Sunday, early in the morning, that Setonam had died. The police had killed another person again. So everybody moved to the police station. And my house is just 100 meters away from the police station, so I witnessed everything. I was also at the police station. The guys called me and they said the van that rammed into the boy, the police van that rammed into the boy on the 9th at the dawn, the police people took the van to repairs that same night at a certain spot. The fitter is ready to talk. The mechanic is ready to talk. He says he didn't know. If he knew this was what they had done, he wasn't going to repair the car for them. So he actually repaired that car for them on the 9th again, the police van that rammed the boys. You know, an accident. This is an evidence. But this evidence, they repaired the car, and unfortunately for them, boys went over to take pictures. So we have pictures of the van.
Wow.
So the time that morning, the boys kind of called me to come and see the repaired van. And I went over there and I took pictures of the repaired van that day myself at the police station. So I was standing there when the rocks started happening. So the boys go and get away, train rocks. So we who were standing at the police station had to run for our lives. And then the police started shooting. And then unfortunately they started shooting live bullets. And the bullet caught 2 boys. One is Hamza Adamu, who is a younger cousin to Jemilu Adamu, the guy who was riding the motorbike. The gun caught him in the stomach and he died on his way to Go Teaching Hospital that same day. And then the gun also caught another guy. He's not mentally too well. His name is Agboibo. You know, he has a mental problem everybody knows in town, but he sells coconut as well. So he's like one of those people who is in town with us. He actually went to the police people. He's not okay. So when the police people were shooting and everything, he went to them and asked them why didn't they ask permission from him before they came to Akachi to shoot. And when he was walking away, the police shot him. They shot him in the buttocks and he came out of his this place. So yeah, and then he's been taken to the Go Teaching Hospital. He's back in Akachi, but you see the operation, everything, and it's so sad. Now the problem is that we the youth in Akachi don't have anybody to speak for us. Unlike them Kranza people, I'm so glad your leaders are standing up for you. Our leaders are not standing up for us. They are playing politics with the whole issue. Our MC, Honorable Kofi Chenya, had organized the meeting with the music. And what they came out with is that they should close all drinking bars. That is the solution they think is going to work. And then he himself, funny enough, our MC himself, he does adverts for alcohol drinks. Yes, that's what he does for a living. And he's so good at it that he will convince you to start drinking alcohol. And now he is saying that they should close alcohol bars because that is the problem. The problem is police brutality, consistent police brutality for over 4 years. We are not talking about something starting now. There are so many boys who are ready to speak up, come up and speak up. So what we also asking is, we need an independent public investigation, something we know. That they would come investigate the issue of police brutality from the start to when it started causing murders. Those are the things we want. And then how do we get this? Shrine is not speaking on our behalf. Nobody is speaking on, Christian Council is not speaking on our behalf. The Islamic Council is not speaking on our behalf. But you see, a Christian boy died. A Muslim boy died. They are all silent. So we don't have, see, our MP is not speaking for us. He says he's taken and he has sent a petition to the Interior Minister and then a lot of issues. And he says the investigation is going to, when he says they're going to have a public investigation, it doesn't mean everybody would know. It means there's going to be a public investigation and it will be secret. I can't work like that. And the issue is we the youth don't know who to report to. Today I was supposed to come with the victims. But then the families called early in the morning and said, the Fix the Country people are organizing a demo and they have guns and some things, so everybody got scared. You understand? And I don't know how to, guarantee the security of this guy traveling from Akachi, so we came, so I had to make them go back. Because we met with their uncle this morning and he says, I said I have to speak. Because he's been consistent and nobody's speaking up for my people. And it could be me next, it could be my brother next, it could be my cousin next, because I'm from Akachi. And nothing is absolutely happening. And you see, in Ghana, we talk for 2 weeks. The media talks for 2 weeks and it's over. That is the problem I have with this issue. And who do you report the police to? And you see, because in Ghana, we are quite about the little things that matter. For example, the little things like policeman staying on the road and taking 1 cedi, 2 cedi from the drivers. That's the beginning of corruption. Because see, the police service is supposed to serve with integrity. But trust me, they're serving with impunity. You see, and it's a problem for we. So I'm so glad the Fix the Country movement gave us a platform to speak up. I wish other media organizations would give us a platform, not only to speak up, but to follow this case. And I'm calling on the lawyers. I don't know, we don't have human rights lawyers in Ghana. We don't have pro bono lawyers in Ghana. The youth of Akachi are at the mercies of the police and the politicians. Our leaders are the police and the politicians because, unfortunately, none of our leaders are talking, unlike in Kranza. So we need the world, we need the human rights organizations, we need those who would speak for us. So I am glad I am here today to speak for my people. And I'd like to say, kindly, let this not just end in talking. The police people who committed these atrocities are known. They have faces. There should be justice. And apart from justice, there should be a public investigation or an inquiry into issues of consistent police brutality in Akachi. And I'm repeating the word consistent. Because I am saying between 50 to 100 youths have been brutalized by the police over a span of 4 years. And I'm serious about it. And there are a lot of people ready to talk. Like they say, when are we talking? So I'm also asking the Face the Country movement. I like the way the press conference is going today. I don't want the media to come to Akachi so we'll talk. I want you to be able, if the media would, you see, we don't have money to pay the media to come. But if the media would really come to Akachi, would set a day, the media would come to Akachi, you'd hear stories and you'd marvel. Because we are willing to talk. We are not afraid. But it's just that we don't know what would happen if we come to Accra and we're going back, anything. Because, you know, it's happened to the guys, the police brutality guys, you know, they caught the £1 billion guys and then they died. Then Kranza guys are saying he saw something, he said, and he's now dead. Kaka, he's dead. Ahmed Swale, he's dead. It's scary. So what I'm saying is, I'm begging the world. I'm begging all people who can help us. There's so much police brutality going on in Akachi. And there's been 3 extra judicial killings. This should not go unpunished. Thank you very much.
Northern region. Ntuzuka Yaku Abdul Hakim on the February 13th. Yarakum Shilibila Mani Sunda Duru come registered. Come and got the policeman Duru Hali and come at the Gary the Mashabu police station. Kala Dur Madam Hali the Mashau police, the Mashau chief palace. Kabutulu man and Tingle Durman. So when the Durmani man Kanama Yina Namani Yinanu Pamber and Taba. So when Taba Ka area ma Yusubayina and see no. But to do a hard none and like it until long la. Sunimane Ka police ma calli the headquarters. Ka 2 police shabahana. So bandit canna. Ka Chilgamarafan Mango. When Chilgamarafan Mango into Zua Mira Bella Parken, the mini police station ma one taba. So Pilmarafan Mango. The man is shake up bullets match up babu. So room babu into her cabin. Bizon charge, then a cup colma. Can chowny man. Ni chowny man. Can Doctor Matia and Bizon and no put you. Cabazon. It's a man, but that will be man of that. Prime of babu parties who got a pitch out to man. So we 2 man. Ni man who are can. So hal Doctor Madawa born biyani marafa kulong babu ba. Uda cover limit. Kabo chika si so ti yelo ni mazasa ka vele kan tinya marafa kulmani chi man. Nta rinda kuno sham Abdul Hakim barama. So ka tuku dwal hali. Ka putir release body mati ta ka sham to so. Ka police ma ku kana ntia no ben velo so har kan na magba. The machine Abarayina, the Rian State Law Committee, cover virus or Okono ala Hale Karaza hat cham. I could bahumbo. Our bundles, I could bahumbo, our bundles. Gana mi ben shak and papa me. I kaya be I kalari. Up to Zawa so imagine the Lin Karanyala Louis Haruna be Busso Bika on Lam. Then Uncle Zani. Odian 12 kam, near Pashi. Onan Jore. ama parents man kama bo zora da biam no yuho so na or lax ma joya kaya no chenti na won ko so mi oyen yina carte non sham o mi oyen fabel non so kama ndo artama no kunye ma or ma fila no di ama o mi oyen dile tusu or ma fabel no fabel o mi oyen fabel tusu so ter sor mi netinya munya yina tezap kan no den konko gana za ha cost ni nye yusma mi nye gana ma ay ku pora ati yanzu so berbin mi Abdul Hakim ne yisina ntinye su is ida kode ngare on de tiar no bisha be ko ru ku paga on de tiar no bisha ama ba ziwonya vele so ti be yina tsabe kaya ne o ban chanya mbimi de sem pa ma biana mbimi de sem pa bu biana so tin palan yar mo ma ti yar mun ba ti yar mun tre be ti yar mun tu ban na biana to ban na biana mo ma kara ta'i kala la min police ma ban yar ma kal bilan no to win sha'am jan ba intaha Abdul Hakim darakan ka kul dle ha le ka tiyan chan to so lor da kan ni chan to so intaha moton mun le ka tara ku ba in chan bara man kala la leaders ma sa sabian so bi na to support karnya la kala si man bara ma birin nan ka tmal la are dala ban ma na hutu bir nan ka trim malla ni fi shaban za to zo dala ban ma na hutu no so to sur la jonga kwamba ni ba mali especially media ma bana ni to zap to zo kachi bana yan resila la bin yara ma karchan ka ba mali ku ka bina to zap to zo so sur la media kala suhre fix Ghana fix the country ba ni mo na wona son to sasa kala ban ma no don ta na ku mali sharan ba
Okay.
Thank you.
Oh, wait, say the.
Okay, my name is Yakubu Hamdan. I am from the north. Tamale. Tamale.
Boss.
My name is Nafi Mohammed. I speak for the family of Kaka, who is my late cousin. So, as I recall to what happened last year, on 26th of June 2021, Kaka was attacked right in our house. Thereof, he was taken to Edra Municipal Hospital. From there, to Konfanoti Teaching Hospital in Kumasi. On 28th of June, he died. So from there was no any police investigation. On the 26th, when the incident happened around 1:30 a.m., we did reported the issue to police. Police did not come to the scene until after 16 hours. After 16 hours before they came there with the pressure of Oberema Hidie, the Ibrahini. He intervened because the youth, we went to him and complained about what's really happening. So Ibrahini forced the police to be there. On 28th, Kaka died. The youth were angry. They demand for justice because they know what Kaka stands for. He stands for fixing the country and fix Edra. Kaka died on the 28th, as I said. On the same 28th, when the police realized that the youth were angered, they proceeded to arrest 2 bodyguards of our former MC, Mohammed Salis Ubamba. Their arrest was accompanied by the series of threats that comes from the camp of the former MC.
So his 2 bodyguards were arrested. So on 29th, the youth moved to the streets to demand justice for Kaka. On the streets, they were attacked by the military and the police. A lot of shootings went on, and 2 guys lost their lives. Muntala Mohammed and Abdul Yusuf Nasser. They died at spot. About 4 others were injured. On 30th, when the youth were angered, on 30th, the police swiftly arrested the brother of Kaka, who is Idi Mohammed, just to take the attention of the media and the individual Ghanaians from the fact that the allegation is on the MCE for the killing of Kaka. They arrested Idi. So, the arrest of Idi, there was no any serious investigation about the incident. No communication between the family of Kaka and police. No investigation has been carried out until the president formed a committee that sat down, investigated the case, and came out with their report, which was a report the family have not accepted up to today. We have not given any credence to the report up to today. So after our press conference against the outcome of the report, then the police swiftly on the 30th of September came to our house for forensic and crime scene investigation. That was 4 months after the incident. To my dismay, I was asked by the police to set the scene as it happened that day. So then they have to bring the 2 big sticks that was retrieved from the crime scene. His motorbike, they will say we should bring it from the room and put it where we saw it at that dawn. So it was just a problem for us. So I told them, how do I do that? So they still insisted. They went in and removed the motorbike, tried to set the scene as it happened that way. It still went on. We were in court, up and down, no any investigation after that, and there is no any communication as I indicated already. After a period of 10 months, the 2 suspects who are the MCE bodyguards, Anyas and Alassane Fusini, were also given bail. Subsequent to that, our brother, we insisted on them, they also granted him bail. As at now, there has the case, the plea and everything have never been taken in court. We are still in court, which is almost a year now. Up and down. Series of adjournments. Nothing has been said. The only thing that will be said in court is AG is to advise on that. We should wait for AG's advice. We as a family think that we have not been, the state have not treated us fairly because we lost a soul who is Kaka. Through him, we lost other 2 individuals. Others injured. To add to that, junior brother of mine, Awal Misbah, has been amputated through the shooting of the brutalities of the police. A lot of pains. One, Louis Ayupa, as at now I'm telling you, he cannot eat well because his intestines has been replaced with some kind of plastics in Edra. Up to now, no justice has been served to the people of Edra. The only thing we are told is the MC have been sacked when already he has already resigned. 2, the police commander there was swiftly transferred. Legal compensation was given to the 2 families who died, which is Nasiru, Abdul Nasir Yusuf and Muntala Mohammed, a compensation.
the injured individual are still going on medical attention, and they are still fighting for their life. We are here to tell all Ghanaians and all our clergy that we need justice. We are not fighting for compensation. We are much more in need of justice. Justice must be served. Every institution needs to be professional in the execution of their work. We call on all stakeholders, from our imams, our Zongo leaders, our Christian council, our peace councils. We in our cause have petition series of bodies in this. We have petition series of bodies in this matter. As at this time, I'm telling you, none of the bodies have replied us. So we are much worried in our bodies or state bodies that are silent on this issue. They don't want to fight for us. When our voices are not heard, we are of the view that when they speak, maybe their voice might be mightier than ours. But this is the case, justice is not served to us. Thank you very much.
That anybody has at this point. If the questions are directed at any of the families or the victims or victims directly, then I'll have them answer that question directly. Sorry, any questions? Okay.
So my name is Haja Bintu. I work with Class Media. I want to find out from this press conference, what you are doing today. I don't know what you want the police to do for the public, because specifically you have not told us. You are raising concern on how they are displaying their weapons.
Yeah.
And instances that we see most policemen, for instance, the woman that you're talking about, I was reading the data that the policeman handled at the bank. I don't know what the police training holds or how it gives them or how the military, if they are to arrest one person. You can see a group of like 5-10 policemen wielding their weapons and then pointing guns, and sometimes it slips and they shoot. Yeah. So I don't know whether that is part of the practice that the police who are service giving people, and then if they are to deal with a civilian, for example, how you want the current IGP who says he's reforming the police, and then some of the things that they are bringing on, how you want them to handle their weapons, and then how they should control crowds in terms of demonstrations, whether youth are attacking them or whichever. So I want to know. And then the guy from Akachi, he said he made a statement. I want to be sure. He said the boys were
Extrajudicial killings, to the UN Special Rapporteur on Freedom of Assembly, to Shraj, to the European missions. That is it. And one of the things that we have noticed over the years is that a lot of times when we have significant incidences of police violence, one of the ways in which we are, maybe undeliberately, excusing violent conduct from the police is that we use this language, oh, we need to train them more. All they need is training. But we've been using this language of training for a very long time in a way that excuses conduct. We talk about training in Aya, also West Warburg. We talk about training in Jura. These incidences, it's not just whenever police misconduct themselves. Let's say when a person commits a crime, nobody says you committed a crime, let's train you. When they commit a crime, we need to hold them accountable. Yes. And one of the reasons why one of the things we're calling for is an independent commission, an independent body that investigates every incident where police charges weapons. One of the things Felicity talked about is the fact that police themselves have told us that within the police force, to get any performance-related promotion, unless you kill an armed robber. Wow. These are words by the police themselves. The police themselves understand that the PIPS process is not working. There are so many journalists who have even been brutalized by police, who have tried to go through the PIPS process, and for 7 years, nothing is happening. They're not even called the case. Even in Nigeria, with regard to the police misconduct in Nigeria, the PIPS process was engaged. They refused, they kept torturing the folks from Nigeria for weeks. They continued to refuse. Eventually, when they refused it, when they received the petition, the complaint, when you go and follow up, they said nothing has happened yet. And then eventually they said, Tiwa Dankwa, who was head of PIPS, has been transferred, so we don't know where the matter is. This is it's a meandering process where there's no end to it. So this is what we are saying, that you cannot, somebody described it as asking a leader to investigate his goat. You cannot ask the police themselves to investigate themselves. You don't do it. So this is one of the things we're asking. The second thing we're asking for is that we do not want to see the military involved in crowd control law enforcement situation. That is not their training. That's not the work they do. And so every time when you have military involved in this situation, it leads to fatalities. And we continue to pretend that the military are bringing some sort of discipline to the police. No, they are purveyors of violence themselves. So we're asking that we must have a policy that seizes and stops it completely. Particularly knowing that a lot of the situations, demonstrators are unarmed. They are not shooting, they are not engaged in a situation that requires violence and force to be used. The third thing we are asking for, again in connection with the lack of, the bigger problem is even the lack of data. The police are refusing to give information on the number of people who were killed. So it is difficult to assess this information unless you have sporadic information here and there, and you have to sit down and try to aggregate what comes out in the media. So without getting the full breadth of what the problem is, we cannot devise wise police policies to be able to deal with the situation. So these are some of the things we are talking about. That unless these things are put in place, unless the police stop the use of live ammunition for crowd control, there's nowhere in the world. In fact, a couple of days ago, I was driving with one of our conveners, and we saw a policeman directing traffic with a gun strapped around his waist. Like, how have we normalized violence and weapons in this democracy? These are the things that we want to draw attention to. Because if we are normalizing guns in this way, obviously people are going to be trigger happy. And the fact that they are trigger happy, for instance, police tell us that when they shoot somebody, they're not even placed on administrative leave for a period to investigate it. The next day they are back on the street. It doesn't happen in any other democracy. So unless we demand these things critically and stop away from, let's just train them and let's just give them body count. If you are not holding people to account, nothing is going to change. The recommendations that was made for Ejura about the military persons involved, nothing happened. Then we continue to maybe transfer a police officer here. Transfer is not punishment. Transfer is part of the general policing already. So these are some of the things we are calling for specifically in terms of actions, and also actions that we are going to be taking in this regard. So there was a question as to whether or not violence is a canker. We started this democratic journey, particularly to get away from the dark days when you can be picked and killed. And so this violence thing is what we're asking for, a similar body with independent powers to just investigate interactions with police that lead to death. And that's what we're asking for. All this talk of doing all this show on television doesn't help anybody. So we are completely agreed in that regard. And one of the things we are doing, as we talked about in the petitions we are giving of, is also that we are working with the parliamentarians to make a statement on the floor of Parliament, but also to draft a private members' bill. Now we are already started a consultative process for drafting a private members' bill with the member of Parliament who's going to move it forward. Our hope is that the Attorney General's Department picks that up, because our fear is that because the Constitution, we have a terribly drafted Constitution, which says that anything that imposes a charge on the consolidated fund cannot come through private members. So essentially, for the vast time of our democracy, members of Parliament do not even propose any laws. They just wait for the executive. If that provision is again instrumentalized to block the process, again, we've talked so many times about constitutional reforms already on this question. But our objective, even for people who believe that the Constitution is defective, we have been the loudest in the use of the Constitution to demand for freedoms for people. And we'll continue to test the processes. We'll continue to draft that process and ensure that an independent commission is put in, body is put in place that investigates.
With prosecuting powers.
With prosecuting powers, yes. That the police have released a press statement claiming that myself, a number of individuals, I don't know, I suppose in essence that we are planning a demonstration where we are proposing to arm demonstrators. On Sunday, 29th May, we sent a notice to the police informing them of our intention to demonstrate on June 4th from June 4th. Our hope was that from June 4th going, we'll have a 3-day sit-in demonstration. So for 3 days, we're picketing on the forecourt of the Flagstaff House, as was done for occupying Flagstaff House, because we're allowed access to the lawns of that. Now, in doing so, we are mindful and we know the fact that every time crowds come together, and we are seeing that peaceful demonstrators, the police continue to deploy persons with live ammunition and shooting them. And we are telling the police that the flagrant use of weapons and violence in this manner is what is terrorizing citizens. In our very first demonstration, we told the police that we have gotten our own marshals, and that the marshals will handle crowd control. Because every time the police get involved in crowd control, they kill us. And because we are fearful of the police force that uses violence, one of the conversation points we want to have with them is that if they're comfortable, we want to organize for a private security company to provide our own security. We do not want the state to be involved in that process, because the state has for so long been the greatest purveyor of violence on young Ghanaian men. And because of the fear that the police are more likely to kill us, we are seeking that they leave the function of protecting demonstrators to us. In doing so, we are drawing the attention to the fact that if they continue to use violence this way, persons who are going on demonstration to exercise their civic rights under the Constitution might start to think about ways to seek private companies to provide them protection. Because we're very fearful of persons who just kill and there's no repercussions for them. And this is why we told them this. Now, they've written back to us and telling us that this is inconsistent with the Public Order Act. In fact, we told them that if we were to go ahead after our conversation to engage that private security company, we would ensure that if everything they were to carry, that company was to carry any weapons, it would be licensed under the Arms and Ammunition Act. This is not something we are hiding from police, but we are putting their own conduct and the ways in which they are using guns and violence on people on the spot, to show them that people have lost faith and trust in them to be protectors of demonstrators. And this is what we told them. Now they've come back to tell us that this is inconsistent with the spirit of the Public Order Act. In fact, we have decided, and in fact this has nothing to do with the police, but the Ghana traditional authorities have alerted us to the fact that we are still in the no noise making period. And so we are considering alternative days. It has nothing to do with what the police responds to us. But the most important thing we need to confront is that the fact that we have normalized police violence for so long that I am so surprised that we are jumpy when demonstrators now are fearful of the police. Tell me one person who is not going to a demonstration is not afraid that the police is going to kill them. So we are getting to a point in our democracy that if we do not take these things seriously, if we do not take police violence seriously in this manner, persons will start contracting out what should be the law protective responsibility of the Ghana Police Force. And this is the conversation we want to critically have. And since we are in this conversation, we have engaged you, and we have specifically told them this, so that it pricks their conscience as to the violence they are orchestrating in this republic. And we are pricking their conscience. We have no intention of going on this, but we're intending for them to understand what we are doing. Because all over the world, in Nigeria and all other places, where there have been rising terrorism activities, all of it is linked to the military and police misconduct and the ways in which they are using violence without accountability. And we are showing them that if we are serious about this, our whole objective as far as the country is to show you how we can protect our democracy, and to take you behind the scenes and see the fallacies and all the vain promises and the things they do that in fact do not reflect a real commitment to our democracy. We gave you the same example when they were going about and claiming dial 999 for terrorism. In fact, when we dialed the line, we encouraged people to dial the line across the country. Nobody was picking it. When we eventually had somebody pick it the next day after they saw that they had been embarrassed, and we asked the person, what is terrorism? The person says, if you see something fishy, report. Because despite having received with a number of countries 450 million from the World Bank, they have not trained persons who are supposed to be manning these things. And it's important that we do not give the police a pass. Because all we do is that we take their press statement and we read it. They killed 7 people in Asawase and they are armed robbers. And then we report their press statement and we say, police debunk, or it's not true, or it's false. We have to start using allegedly even when the police speaks. Sure. Because they have shown themselves as persons who are not committed to truth. And this is important. And what we want to do is to bring these problems visually to you, to confront you with it, and so you ask yourself, is this the democracy we have? Is this truly a democracy? I am a pacifist by nature. I've never held a gun. I have no intention of owning a gun ever. But I do not subscribe to a democracy where I must be fearful and must see police officers directing traffic with guns strapped to their waist. This is not normal anywhere else. I'm telling you. It is not normal anywhere else. And so unless we show the moral outrage for these things that we have normalized and allowed to go, they are not going to stop. And if this is what it takes, this visual thing, to show you that it's going to get a point that you are not going to be turning guns on citizens all the time, then it might get to that point. And this is a wake-up call for you to change policing methods to conform to modern standards. These things are going to continue. Yes.
I have two.
Now, this letter B, we had it a long time ago. And the reason why I said that they're using it to divert attention is that they responded to us long ago. And our lawyers were sending them a legal response. Now, the reason why I said that this is fake news is that we sent them a notice where there were 3 organizers for the demonstration. And I was listed as a lawyer for the organizers. Okay. Now, when they then say it, they say 4 organizers. And that's why I said fake news. Okay. But there's an intentional element of trying to create the impression that obviously these people are committed to coup. And I've made it very clear that is not our intention. We want for you and everybody else to see where our democracy is going. That we excuse violence from the state. This is what we are talking about. I hope that satisfies your question.
That's fine, thank you.
Any other question? So these are the things we are talking about. So yes, we send that to them because we want to draw attention to the violent nature of policing in this country. And that demonstrators are not safe. That we do not trust the role that the law has given them to provide security to us. And that's why persons might start to look for private companies to provide them security. In fact, the chances that this will lead to deaths of people, it's more likely to come from the police than any private security company. The military. That's deliberate silencing. And if you who are supposed to hold them to account and shine a mirror to them are afraid of them, of these institutions, why? Because we've given them guns. The purpose of the guns is to protect us, not turn them on us. So these are what we are talking about. And we would use every form to break conscience, to tell you that there's something not normal about this. Because as long as we are generating these conversations, it's important. Somebody might reflect on it and say, no, there's something wrong here. It doesn't make sense for the police in a civilian interaction to kill you. It doesn't make sense. Freedom report, which showing the declining press freedom in Ghana, is that so many more journalists are self-censoring themselves because of the fear of repercussions. Now tell me critically, I do not think that information, which is supposed to be a restricted document, that the police put in the media was intended for the British High Commission. They had already sent that to them. This is communicating to you. And the intention is for you to be able to see that even if this is the British High Commissioner, what do you think will do to you if you speak up? Now this is an ongoing case, my criminal case against me, purportedly that I'm trying to overthrow the Republic. Yeah. For 6 months, the police have not even started the trial. They don't show up in court. In fact, yesterday I was in court, and they didn't turn up again. And the judge warned them that if they don't come up the next time, she's going to throw the case out. But yet, what they are committing is that they are lynching me in the public. Because the thing was supposed to be about traffic offense, the woman said. He says, if you've mentioned arrest, then let me tell you about the other one. It's like when we were in school and they said write about Australia, he said, before I write about Australia, Austria is what you have learned Austria. And so you start regurgitating Austria to them instead of Australia. It had no connection to what they're talking about. But the whole intention is that the police can sit down. Again, and I'm very certain that this is not something that the IGP released without consultation with the persons within higher levels of government. That if they can sit down and draft all these statements, come and give me my day in court. Let me have the opportunity as a person now who is charged. I am innocent before proven guilty. Let me have my fair trial. Let's go to court so I'll be able to prove my innocence. You're not doing that. You're not interested in that. Because this is a PR republic and a PR governance at best. That's what they do. They're more interested in releasing these things into the public to cause public dissatisfaction for pro-democracy activists. Since the country has been consistent, this is substandard democracy. To say that our democracy is not delivering on its promises, it doesn't mean that we have given up on democracy. We want a better democracy. And we'll not make any apology for that.
When next are you doing court?
I'm doing court on the 29th of June. But I'm also on court on a traffic offense on 7th of June.
Court.
I'm again in court, I think on the 3rd of June as well, actually in Tema. Because the police went to the same district court to say that they are looking, to give them a search warrant on my phone, saying they are looking for crime or evidence of crime. When you've already charged me. A fishing expedition. So we decided to challenge it in the High Court. And we've argued the first part of the matter. And when they saw that they were losing the matter, they went to another High Court in Accra to go and get a secret order under the Cyber Security Act. I know this, I don't care, my communications are open. But the fact is that out of principle, I'm challenging that. Because our advocacy is about showing the limits of government. Government must have a limit. And if you're not careful in placing limitations on the powers that the government can exercise, we're already living in a dictatorship.
What I presume is still with the court.
Yes.
Is that not taking a toll on your travels or your education in Cambridge?
Before I came, my understanding was that the police know they have nothing. Their real hope was that the High Court would deny bail. So that for 3 years, like so many people I met in there for years, their case never starts, it's never called. You're just left in there. That's their real intention and purpose. Because that's what they were gunning for. In fact, and I'm saying this on record, the Inspector General of Police went to the Tema High Court to try to persuade the judges not to grant bail. Tell me, is this normal in a democracy? So that's the real intention. So my passport, they can keep it. For me, I'm doing even much more valuable work now. And again, right now if you look at my advocacy, it's focused on prison reform. If you put me in any corner, my first question is, how do I make this corner brighter? Yeah. If you're claiming that we are interested in guns and violence, we'll show you the face of violence of the Republic. Yeah. That is what is most important to you. And perhaps our form of advocacy, which is not tied into a partisan project or elections, people are seeing that this is new, what is this, and we don't understand it. Listen, we're also trying to build Ghanaians out of a partisan framework and show you that if we demand critical questions of our democracy, we can get answers. Yes. That's what our interest is. And we don't know how long the country is going to last. We don't know how long people are going to be able to support this. But I assure you, for as long as we have this opportunity, we will continue to advocate for what is right so that all Ghanaians get their due.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Nice one. And so on and so forth. You don't want another commission of inquiry because they don't work. Yes. So what are you really asking?
Yes. So your colleague had asked that question earlier.
Sorry, I wasn't.
It's fine. What we are calling for is that a body that has the same kind of attention we are giving to the Special Prosecutor for Corruption, that it must have the power to be able to prosecute police misconduct. That we must take that police misconduct out of the PIPS process where it gets stuck and nothing gets done. That every time a police officer shoots, the person is immediately placed on administrative leave. For a commission which has forensic experts, ballistic experts, lawyers, persons with long years of experience in policing, who then come and investigate the scene and interrogate this statement. For this whole idea of we arrested somebody and we are working with the person, then the person we are with winds up getting shot by us on the other side. It doesn't make sense. And we get the stories and we just read them and we publish them. There has to be a body that follows up and does the rigorous work of holding somebody to account. Media houses have to start revising their publishing guidelines, in-house media guidelines, for how you cover the police and police violence. Like enough of the clash, two dead. How did they wind up dead? All this language that we do not want to directly, call the police accountable, all those things excuse violence and we become target of it. That media, I'm not just saying this, media persons are also being targeted and being brutalized by the police and the military. And we don't see how, the small twist in language, when we see, you're trying to shoot me and I'm holding a stone, then we say, missiles, protesters throw missiles. Like all those, we are putting our own selves at risk. Like, listen, if you leave this camera behind and you're working with me, nobody knows you're media. Even when you have the camera, they're beating you up. Even when you want to record the police misconduct, they're beating you up. In fact, my colleague, when I was arrested recently again, my colleague, I had given him the charge sheet I was given. He was taking a picture of it with me to share with media men. He was swapped out with the media men. Why are you taking a picture of a charge sheet? A public document. The police have not learned the language of self-regulating, of knowing that there are repercussions for their conduct because we are none. So we are hoping that we are real partners in this journey. We are not only protecting yourself, but you're protecting your own families. In fact, I was surprised to find out that the young man who died in Nkranza, Albert, that's the direct nephew of the Nkranza South MP. It is getting home. MPs have been killed. It is getting closer to home. So this is what we're trying to highlight. I mean, if there are any more questions, my colleague Okedechi will take them.
We are sure, sir, you know, publication in the media, police said, you say, you're contracting private security. I can say you credit you. Say the video Oliver Kanye. I Troy. Na you say Ghana for you want to say yentimenji police na you want and they any. Cause police ya so boy who buy no. And then go for a TC and Mountain some the some way pentekwa. No more than it you know, I don't know so. Near Kuye. Once you have seen a 3 days. Now 3 days, the police in Libya and the board for wire stress. That's what China was in the board for say, I didn't 3 days. We have big Caribbean and the board for now what 2K. See it to me, your money. And yet, they go former band and branch and echo. So the onus lies on us here, but walk or mobile. Yeah. The ever born mobile near any police in the police in who has a free bread and your boy over a woman you and then you some more one ever boy. Let you try. Say you look at ministers, therefore, must say control somewhere. I can't woman one gassa. Woman who Japan deal said Japan deal no. Ya babaji, Sabio, your good year, and ya quackosha and wish your 4 being sano. Woman who I be affected police by your highlight here. No. Your true woman says been previous. Ye let be a year to Tunko for bottom woman who was highlighted you. Ya highlight here, no, and wow. Never one person who caused disaffection for a year. And then go for our money, say, or money ever Nantiamia. It almost said I know what to be to say. Crata, a year page 9 why every woman. Baby, a here one see a sea book true. Here, what we don't broadcast in here, one. That can't ever say I don't broadcast. Yes, a fake system, no more creatino, a Yaman 9 the Gina show. And Yaman 9 the Yedikai, a year presidency, the political class. It's your co-presidents who won the last place. 2, a parliament. What money you have to about you 2 years or months? I say, Womunko and Conco Shamra, MIA. And so, Continental, no one service of yours. I've been a domitrim and from the General Sadio. What shall your ma woman to me here? Say, you love you 2 months forward to Messica and Yaduma, near a year from month for 2. If you know Macquaco didn't come, say, Japan, you know, a service of the day now. Now, Bushabi, a Kabushabia, I know. And now we say, Adia Echo is Yenina in the it is not MPP or NDC. Abushabi or Moankasatra Sia for more plan say, Ghana your Mudia from Kwame Temperatio, if someone and not any JB Dampa. And then the Omania 2 men at your Moya Yina said, or Mubay and your many Yina Diaco, Yabot get ye Bibia. The Enchima Baba Fenina fan. Said the Abaya Womufra Bam Crack or Tenetira, Womun the Bam managing the resources of this country. And then Achimota and Andrew say you call Achimota Forest there and no the Mayan from Makakra, and one classy. And you put money for your better as well, Bushaya, or one person only Gane. I could yes, you see a quack champion. Yes, you're true. I know police a yellow, no one can was it. Now, what idea one way, baby? One more use Otum for this to do as a shield to their governance. It's what I catch Achimota and some, or must I dare release BB into the media say, I buy Ama 400 acres to Otum for. Now, some say your 400 acres to Otum for, forest reservoir. As I said, one more quantity through Otum for what some of the Quaquaya and one who's Adiana Mocasa Monico and Mokawe. Now, we jam one mobile William or Bush for forever. And for that matter, Mofamra, no Rashuma and a month for. Now, so much should I play on the minds of the people? And there is the police in this one, me and Flagstaff House and him for 3 days. Then they were 1 year, 2 year, only to me direct a market 3 days, maybe 1 day. One average how many days I demonstrating. When in France, people can be on the street for 3 months. When in Hong Kong, people can be on the street for 6